Hello there. My name is Brian Lunduke, and this is not a show. This is a presentation of sorts. I have a tendency of going to conferences all over the United States and the world and getting up in front of large groups of people and telling them about something that I hate. This is just a thing that I do a lot. And there's something that has been gnawing at me, really just eating away at me for a while now, that I need to get out. I don't have an audience here, but I do have the internet, so I'm going to pretend like this is a presentation in front of a whole lot of people that I'm going to tell you about something that I really, really am pissed off about, and that is that the World Wide Web sucks. Now, if you are not familiar with me, I give presentations on things like how the Internet of Things is going to destroy all of us, and it will, or how they're watching you, which they are. And of course, mostly I talk about how much Linux sucks, which it does, or at least it used to. It sucks a whole lot less nowadays. But the World Wide Web, it sucks possibly more than anything. It is truly, truly heinously bad. Now, when I say the World Wide Web sucks, I'm not talking about the internet. I'm not talking about the IP protocol. I'm not talking about TCP/IP. I'm not talking about any of the infrastructure. What I'm specifically talking about is the old WWW, the World Wide Web, web browsers, HTML browsers, the standards behind web browsing, all of that stuff. It sucks. It sucks so bad, it makes my head want to just go and all over the place. Now, before I go any further, I should point something out. My show, I have a regular show that I do, and that show is sponsored by some wonderful, freedom loving, awesome companies like System76.com. They make laptops and desktops. They're great. They ship them with Linux. Awesome guys, right? Pogo Linux, PogoLinux.com, servers and storage servers and desktop workstations. Again, shipping with Linux. Great. Awesome guys at PogoLinux.com. Neither of those guys, none of those companies have anything to do with this. My opinions here probably are not shared by them because they are rational, reasonable human beings. Me, maybe not so much. All right, let's get into this. Bear with me, stick with me as far as you can. I think I'm going to convince a few of you. However, I am pretty confident that many of you web browser developers out there and web developers and web page designers are going to hate many of the things that I'm about to say. And being as a lot of you are my very good friends, I am probably never going to hear the end of any of it. But what the hell? Let's dive in. To start with, we are going to talk about web page size. And I know, this is a really boring place to start, but it gets to a point that I think is absolutely ridiculous, and I think you'll agree. This is the trend line of average web page size. And there's actually multiple websites out there that track the average web page size and web page size of specific web pages over time. They take little snapshots. One of them does snapshots every 15 days or so. Notice a trend? This is the last 6 years of data, and this is an average. Many websites are much, much bigger than this. All the way back in 2011, in January of 2011, it was 700K, 750K was an average website. It's pretty reasonable, right? I mean, it's mostly text, some images, maybe a few websites have like an embedded WAV file or a weird Flash thing embedded in it or something like that, right? A little extra JavaScript here and there. But really, why would you need to have a website that was bigger than like a meg? That would be just ridiculous. I mean, that's huge. Like, most books aren't that big, let alone a single page. And I should be clear about this. This is not websites. This is not the entirety of a website. This is just a single page. The average single page. If you go to, let's say, the front page of yahoo.com, that's what we're talking about here. Just that one page. Notice nowadays, we're almost up at 3 megs. 3 megabytes for a single page of mostly text. That is an insane amount of data growth. That means that in the last 6 years, we've added over 2 megabytes in size. That may not seem like a lot. Our hard drives are pretty big nowadays. But do we need it to be that big? Does it really need to be? That's almost 300% growth. That is huge growth. That is absolutely astronomical. I'm going to jump past that for a moment. Bear those numbers in mind. Keep them up here. And we're going to go to RAM usage. Okay, now stick with me here. If your eyes are starting to glaze over, stick with me because I think you're going to get this and you're going to go, oh, hot damn, the web does suck. RAM usage, it sucks. Check this out. This is the browser RAM usage growth. Now, I had to do some fancy footwork to get this to figure out exactly. So I managed to get on my personal computer, which is Linux powered, but this will apply whether you're running Windows or Mac or anything, roughly anyway. I managed to get one of the very first web browsers, NCSA Mosaic, came out in 1993. I loaded up a web page, a common web page, one of the top websites in all the land, CNN.com, current CNN.com, in NCSA Mosaic. It took roughly 10 megabytes of RAM for the entire application and the web page to render and display. Honestly, in 1993, that was a bit of RAM, you know? I mean, it wasn't like crazy, but it was a bit of RAM. Jump forward to 2011. One of the earliest versions of Firefox I could get to work was Firefox 4. In 2011, it used over 100 megabytes of RAM to render, same page, CNN.com, current CNN.com. Flash forward to today, Firefox 53, not the current version of Firefox because Firefox 54 came out like the morning I record this video, but Firefox 53 uses well over 400 megabytes to simply display CNN.com. That's some significant growth to display the exact same page. Now, they don't all display it the same way, which I'll show you in a minute, because I took screenshots all along the way, because why not, right? But that's some massive growth. I mean, that's insane. To start with, the growth curve is crazy. That's nuts. Second, 400 plus megabytes to display CNN.com, a web page that is roughly one like standard printer sheet of paper big of text and images, mostly little tiny thumbnails, maybe with one little bit bigger picture. I mean, if you took everything on CNN.com and rendered it as a 4K video, it still wouldn't be 400 megabytes in size. So what the hell is it doing? Well, let's compare things some more, just so we can really understand what's going on here. Here is the projected growth. Should that growth trend continue, by 2023, we should be approaching about 1.5 gigs of RAM to display CNN.com. And then, of course, in 2029, we're over 5 gigs of RAM to display CNN.com. Now, you may say, that's insane. That's insane, Brian, that you would project such a crazy growth. However, in 1993, if you had said, it will take 400 megabytes of RAM to display a single page of text with some image thumbnails on CNN.com, I think we would have all said that that's insane. That would never happen. No developer on earth could possibly be so bad, so horrible, that it takes over 400 megabytes of RAM. If you watch the browser wars happening between Internet Explorer, Edge, I guess, whatever Microsoft's calling their browser right now, and Chrome and Firefox and Apple's Safari, you'll note that they compete on speed and RAM usage a lot. but they're really kind of splitting hairs because they're all taking hundreds of megabytes of RAM to display a single web page. It's pretty atrociously bad. Now, it takes, if you calculate that out, CNN.com, that web page is almost 5 megabytes in size, which is insane. That is absolutely insane, because if you look at the page, it should not be 5 megs in size. I can't possibly fathom how the web designers and developers at CNN possibly get their page to be 5 megs in size. That is preposterous. However, what's even more crazy is that every megabyte that they produce at CNN.com for their webpage takes roughly 100 megabytes of RAM to display on screen. Let that sink in for a moment. How friggin' stupid is that? That is insanity. That is absolute insanity. I used to be a software developer. I got out of it because it was too much work, and I'm a very lazy man. However, I used to make games, right? So I made video games is mostly what I did. And if I had made it so that every image, every sprite that's displayed on screen takes, let's say each one is 100, is 1 meg. Each one is 1 meg. If my code was so bad that it took 100 megabytes of RAM to display one little 1 megabyte picture in my game would have never run. We wouldn't have released it. That would have been a showstopper bug. That is so bad. It is ridiculous. And to compare it, just to compare it, the original Doom, the 3D first-person shooter for DOS, this is an exact quote from the system requirements for Doom. Doom requires an IBM-compatible 386 or better with 4 megs of RAM. To start with, Doom on the disk is smaller than CNN.com on the disk, at least the main page of CNN.com. And the amount of RAM required is quite a bit different. Let's compare those, shall we? This is just up here just to make developers feel bad. Just to make not web page developers, web browser developers feel bad about their rendering engines. This right here is CNN.com. This little sliver down here is Doom. Doom revolutionized the gaming industry. This is just showing a web page very slowly and very, very poorly. So something to think about the differences in RAM usage. Also, not to make you feel too bad or anything, but this is how much RAM was on the guidance computer, roughly, for the Apollo 11 moon landing. 2K. 2K of RAM. Dos de kilobytes. That was insulting to somebody, I'm sure. But 2K of RAM. That's a crazy small amount of RAM. It's amazing that they got it done in that. It is amazing. What the NASA and JPL engineers pulled off to make that happen, stellar. Let's compare that. So the RAM usage for CNN.com is 446.1 megabytes, or 446,000 kilobytes, compared to 2 kilobytes that put man on the moon, that operated the guidance computer to take us to the moon. And CNN, well, let's compare this a little bit better here. CNN takes, I don't know how many, it's 223,000 times that RAM to display today's headlines along with a little bit of gossip news at the bottom. So, just a comparison. All right, keep extrapolating on that now. We're continuing to move forward here. CNN.com gets roughly 475 million visits per month. That's huge, right? That's crazy big traffic. I think you can see where I'm going with this. 475 million visitors times roughly 446.1 megabytes equals 211 petabytes. 211 petabytes of RAM. That's this many megabytes. 211 petabytes of RAM. That's how much RAM, on average, roughly, is being used around the world on computers to do nothing except render CNN.com every month. 211 petabytes of RAM. 211 goddamn petabytes of RAM every month to render CNN.com. The computer that got us to the moon was 2K in size. Doom took 4, and it didn't even need all of it. That was just what was recommended. Check this out. This is the amount of RAM used right here by CNN.com every month, 211 some odd petabytes. Let's compare that to the digitized works of every book made and known by mankind in all of human history. Right down here. You'll notice that the bar for the books, it doesn't show up because it's not enough to equate to one single pixel on this chart. I think it's like 175 gigs, maybe, something like that. It's a lot. It's a lot of data, but it's nowhere near the amount of RAM it takes, the amount of memory that is consumed every month, simply to show CNN.com on the screen. I don't mean to single out CNN.com. Yes, their webpage is slow, bloated, and poorly designed. However, they're not the only offenders here, and there are many web pages, many, that are far worse. CNN.com is just viewed by a lot of people, so it's a good example. You can go check it out right now. Another way to think about this, that is enough RAM to give 28.8 megabytes of RAM to every man, woman, and child on Earth today. Every baby, every grandma, everyone that is alive, even if they don't have internet access, even if they don't have power, we could set aside 28.8 megabytes of RAM just for them. And that's one web page. One web page. How many tabs do you have open right now? Right now, if you're watching this on YouTube or some other video site, this is probably not the only thing you have open. And have you ever sat down and looked at how much RAM your web browser is taking up right now? It's insane. It's insane. And is it necessary? No. It's just really, really bad programming. Super bad. This is a quote that I would like to have attributed to me as often as possible. Websites that detect your location are stupid. Very stupid. Websites detect your location all the time, oftentimes without you even knowing it. I'll give you a really good example. I am perhaps a very privacy-focused fellow. Me and my wife is a software developer as well. And we tend to worry about things like security and security of our home, security of our computer systems and our servers, our privacy, what sort of data is being collected on us. These are things that we think about and we try and be aware of when we're going about our daily lives. And of course, because we're not, living in the Stone Age, we do shopping online. So that means going to places like Amazon.com, BestBuy.com, etc. I also have a tendency to use Tor. And if you don't know what Tor is an anonymizing network. It basically makes it so you connect to this Tor network and it routes your data all over the world through a theoretically random set of nodes around the world. And then your data will come out of an exit node somewhere, a computer or a server somewhere, and then connect to the website you're connecting to. And the end result of that is that it makes your web browsing a little bit more anonymous, a little bit harder to track. It's great for, journalists, whistleblowers, leakers, or just people who are a little bit concerned about possibly being hacked or having their data stolen. So anyway, I use Tor a fair bit. So I was on Tor, and I was using it, and I went to Amazon.com while I was connected through the Tor network. I logged into Amazon.com using my Amazon.com account, and it freaked the hell out. It just totally lost its mind because for Amazon.com, I have it set so it knows my billing address. It knows my shipping address. It knows where I live. Amazon knows a lot about me. However, not only was I exiting my exit node. So it looked like I was coming from another computer, not just in another city, but probably in another country. And Amazon.com detected that. And it's like, what? You're in Great Britain? Well, then I'll switch over to the Great Britain site. Amazon.co.uk, here you come. And then I got confused because somewhere along the line, my exit node must have changed. Are you in Hungary now? Are you in Sweden now? And it got totally confused. Their internal system got totally mucked up, and it got so screwed up to the point I couldn't even order things through Amazon anymore. It was a horrible experience. If you go on tour right now and you go to a website like bestbuy.com, for those of you not around the area I live in, Best Buy is a computer and appliance shopping store. So you buy TVs and computers and whatnot there. If you go to bestbuy.com, the website has a little section where you can say, hey, set your location. Tell us what zip code or city you're in so we can find the store nearest you. Sure, totally fine, right? Then you can see what's in stock at that store. Makes sense. However, not only does it ask you to do that, the website also tries to detect automatically without asking you where you're at. And if the two conflict, oh my God, the website loses its goddamn mind. It just starts to error out and cause craziness and basically renders it totally unusable. So, what I'm saying here is, not only is tracking your location via a web page in any way detecting your location at all, not only is it creepy, not only is it weird and a super invasion of privacy, it is also just damn stupid from a usability standpoint. Don't do that. Do not do that. Web developers, do you hear me right now? If your website currently does that, take it out. Get rid of it. There isn't a good reason. No, don't disagree with me. I know you're going down to the YouTube comments or the Reddit whatevers, and you're about to disagree with me on this. Don't do it. Just take it out. You're saying your manager will be mad at you because you took out the location tracking? I don't care. Take it out anyway. I don't want to see it anymore. It's crazy. That stuff just doesn't work. All right. Let's talk about compatibility. We've basically determined that websites eat up way too much space on disks and eat up way more bandwidth than they need to because those big file sizes are completely unnecessary. And we've determined that they use up more RAM than is in any universe reasonable. Let's talk about compatibility, because this is an interesting bit. This is current version of Firefox rendering CNN.com. Now, ignore for a minute the fact that most of it is a giant advertisement. That's just crappy design. Way to go, CNN.com. However, also note that, it's very cluttered, it's big, a lot's happening. But it renders fine, right? This is the current CNN.com webpage. Let's jump back in time just a couple years to an earlier version of Firefox. Same web browser, roughly the same engine. It's undergone rewrites and whatnot, but this is Firefox version 4. This is Firefox like you'd have on your machine 5 years ago. This is what the same webpage looks like. It doesn't even look like the same webpage, other than there is a CNN logo right there. But all the content is gone. It's literally gone. And that's because CNN.com is utilizing technology that's really only been around for years, if not just months. How insane is that? That means that people with older computers, that means that people with older software, older operating systems, they can't go to CNN.com and have it actually work right anymore. That is stupid. That is ridiculously stupid. The web, in its original design, was a set of HTML documents, of hypertext markup language documents. It was basically text, images, and whatnot, all linked together, providing an easy way to move between documents, to find and discover new documents to read, new web pages to read, to consume, to enjoy, to author, to change. That's what it was for. And there's no reason that CNN.com shouldn't be able to display perfectly in a web browser from just a few years ago, let alone from all the way back back, it should be able to display in an original web browser. One of the first, like this one. This is NCSA Mosaic, version 2.7. As you can see, it's not rendering very well. It doesn't look good. It doesn't look good at all. It basically is a jumbled mess of awful. And why is that? Because not only did the designers of the website do a bad job, but the developers of the you know what? I'm going to stop right there. I'm just going to show you a few more examples real quick here. This is GitHub. GitHub.com, a great standards-loving, open-sourcey sort of website, right? If you don't know what GitHub.com is, don't worry about it. Just assume it's whatever website you normally go to. Looks nice. Modern version of Firefox. Firefox 53. Let's jump back to Firefox 4. All right. It says that, they don't recommend using this crazy antiquated web browser anymore. Ooh, okay. The website mostly still functions. There's a few pieces and parts that don't, and the formatting is a little weird. But hey, you know what? It kind of sort of still functions, which compared to CNN.com is a huge step in the right direction. Let's jump back to NCSA Mosaic, shall we? Yeah. Requested document cannot be accessed. The information server is either not accessible or is refusing to serve the document to you. That is the best you can get from github.com, a website that serves a broad and diverse set of platforms and operating systems, many of which may not have access to Firefox. I mean, that may seem weird to someone coming from Windows or Mac or a modern Linux computer, but there are many operating systems that people work on that can use GitHub, but can't because they don't have access to a modern web browser. Therefore, instead of the web browser becoming the thing that enables you to gain access to amazing amounts of data, to interact with people all around the world, it is actually a preventative measure now. That's pretty awful. And let's load up my website. This is lunduke.com. The reason I load this up right now is not to promote my website, but to show you what a really stupidly simple website looks like. My website has very few pictures, only a handful. It is incredibly tiny. It has a very, very small amount of modern technology of any kind in it. It has some JavaScript, but only a little bit, especially compared to GitHub and CNN and most websites, most modern sites. And this is it. And this is what it looks like. That's what it's supposed to look like. You could say it's badly designed. You could say it's ugly. But that's actually what I intended it to look like. And that's what it looks like in Firefox 53. This is what it looks like in Firefox 4. Roughly the same. The sidebar disappeared. And that's because I think I was using a CSS tag that wasn't around in Firefox 4 or something like that. I need to look into it more. But it's mostly still a functional and browsable website. And this is what it looks like on NCSA Mosaic. The content is all still there. You can still navigate through the website and view it all. The formatting's a little off, but at least it's there. It's still doable to create a website now in 2017 that works just fine in NCSA Mosaic, in old versions of Firefox, in old versions of Netscape Navigator, for God's sake. It's doable. However, web designers have opted not to because they want their content to be viewed by people in very constrained circumstances. Let's talk about that. And this is quite possibly the biggest problem with the web, the World Wide Web, and why it sucks so gosh darn much. It's DRM. And DRM sucks. DRM is digital rights management. It's basically the idea that you could have a piece of content, a book, music file, movie, etc., a video game, and you restrict who can watch it and when, what hardware they watch it on, they view it on, what operating system they use, what piece of software they use, what login credentials they have, what their network access is like, whether or not they're logged into the right server, etc. It's a problematic set of technology, and there's a lot of DRM implementations out there. DRM is just a broad concept, right? But it is problematic for people who want to just simply read a book or watch a movie. Now, The W3C. Let's talk about this. The W3C is the World Wide Web Consortium. It is the organization that is the gatekeeper to all things web. They set the standards. They say these are the standards for HTML, for JavaScript. This is what having a website is. They define it. They standardize on it. They are a working body that standardizes these things. And they have a standardization proposal in there that they call encrypted media extensions. That was written by Google, Microsoft, and Netflix. No joke. Those three companies, people from those three companies wrote this. And it is a specification to create digital rights management as a standard for the WWW, for the World Wide Web. Why is this problematic? Here is part of the W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium's mission statement. The W3C mission is to lead the World Wide Web to its full potential by developing protocols and guidelines that ensure the long-term growth of the web. Okay, all right, fair. It goes on. The web was invented as a communications tool intended to allow anyone, anywhere, to share information. Okay, that immediately starts to contradict with having any DRM implementation whatsoever, because once you restrict the ability for specific people in specific locations to share information, that whole anyone, anywhere thing kind of goes out the window. And they continue. The social value of the web is that it enables human communication, commerce, and opportunities to share knowledge. One of W3C's primary goals is to make these benefits available to all people, whatever their hardware, software, network infrastructure, native language, culture, geographical location, or physical or mental ability. DRM specifically limits you based on your geographic location, based on your network access, based on your ability to pay someone for that, based on your software you're using, based on the operating system you're using, based on the hardware you're using. That is the exact purpose of DRM. That is the whole purpose of DRM. That is the entire point of DRM. And it runs contrary to the very concept of what the World Wide Web was created to be, which really is summed up pretty well there. The W3C, they did a good job of writing this up. They're right. That's the point. And they have decided to throw that out the window. They don't care anymore. And that kind of stinks. Now, let's think about this. DRM can't be the end-all be-all. That can't be the end goal here, because DRM is proven to be ineffective. It's proven to be ineffective. There hasn't been a DRM scheme that hasn't been broken. If you make a video game that uses DRM, people will break it. People will pirate it. People will upload it to torrent sites and Usenet and FTP servers around the globe. It will be everywhere. You can't do it. You can't stop it. You put DRM on a DVD or a Blu-ray, those get ripped quickly and uploaded all over the internet. In fact, putting DRM on anything pretty much ensures that it's going to be pirated more. From what I've seen, the people who have released content that has zero DRM on it have actually benefited from that in terms of sales. So there really isn't a point to DRM. So at least not in terms of, maintaining someone's IP rights, right? I mean, DRM is not there to protect your intellectual property, because it doesn't work. It's impossible to make it work completely. It is. It's never been done. Ever. Not one time. Not one time. So what is this about? This is about the Digital Millennium Copyright Act within the United States. And bear with me here. It reads, at least in part, no person shall circumvent a technological measure that effectively controls access to a work. That's part of the DMCA. And what that says is that for all time, you cannot circumvent DRM, any DRM implementation. And that there's no expiration on that. Why is that important? Because copyrights currently expire. So, if you have a work, let's say a cartoon, starring a famous cartoon character, and it has long since gone out of copyright. Just hypothetical here, totally hypothetical. And it's out of copyright. Legally, there's nothing stopping you from copying that, modifying it, redistributing it. It's out of copyright. It's been around for so long, it's out of copyright. However, if the company distributes it inside of a DRM wrapper, if there is a digital rights management system in place on that file, it is illegal for all time and eternity, as long as the government exists and this law is in effect. It is illegal for you to circumvent that, which means it's illegal for you to modify it, illegal for you to redistribute it. It's illegal for you to work around it in any way, which gives companies massive amounts of power through the Digital Millennium Copyright Act and DRM, which means the W3C, working in conjunction with Google, Microsoft, and Netflix, the authors of the encrypted media extension proposal for the W3C, are intending to restrict as much as possible what people do with content on the web. Once DRM is standardized, there's a standard DRM for web browsers. Once web browsers take that and implement that in Firefox, Chrome, Edge, Safari, etc., websites are going to start implementing it. And those gigantic, slow-loading, RAM-gobbling, barely compatible websites that we have now will look like a golden paradise, because not only will there be additional compatibility problems, but you will lose your ability to simply work with the content that you find on the web. And that's fairly damned scary. Copyrights expire, DRM doesn't. Damned scary. Now, not every change is bad. Over the years, many things have been added to the www that have been good, right? I mean, we got nice video now. We did not have nice video back in 1993. I remember those days. And part of it was computers were slower, and part of it was bandwidth was definitely a lot more limited. I mean, remember back in the days, if you were around surfing the web in the 90s, Real Player and Real Video was becoming a thing, and even that was pretty, it was hit and miss, and it wasn't a great experience. Nowadays, we have good, high-quality, relatively, video as an HTML standard, and that's amazing. We have many new technologies for laying out our pages that are excellent. However, that doesn't mean that every change is good. We don't simply have to accept every awful change. We don't have to accept that our websites are now 5 megabytes in size and take up hundreds of megabytes, if not half a gig of RAM just to render, only because we want to keep around high definition HTML5 video. We don't need that, right? We don't have to. This isn't a situation where we're just going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We can selectively choose the good parts and reject the crap. That's something we can do as a human race. As of right now, this very moment, the World Wide Web is taking up more disk space per page than it should. It just is. It's gobbling up more RAM per page than it should. It's loading slower than it should, and it's watching you more than it should, and restricting you more than it should, and it's breaking itself, like all the time. It's just constantly reinventing and breaking itself. Its compatibility is terrible. It has some of the worst backwards compatibility ever. To give you a comparison, Microsoft Word has been around as a word processor for quite some years now. I mean, there was Microsoft Word for DOS and old versions for like Windows 3.1. The files created in those old versions are still openable in current versions. Current versions of Microsoft Word can save as those old versions, at least for the most part. And that's crazy, because that is a closed down, proprietary, locked down, awful file format. And yet that has better backwards compatibility than the worldwide friggin' web, which was created to be as open as possible. The source code to these web pages, it's open. It's just plain text. HTML is just a plain text file filled with the words that you want to display and descriptions of how you want it laid out and where you want the pictures and such. It's a really simple thing. And yet, our compatibility is god awful, which makes you wonder if our compatibility is truly that bad. And it is. I urge you to download web browsers from decades past, from years past, and play around on the web and see what a gloriously bad experience it is. Or just load up old web pages in newer browsers. They don't break quite as often that way, but they still break a lot. If it's that bad, with that much RAM being used, what in the hell is all that RAM being used for? It's a little ridiculous. Which brings me to this. Because this sucks. This just sucks. We're headed down a path where the web is getting worse. It's getting less compatible. It's destined to be increasingly incompatible, assuming that these encrypted media extensions happen. And if history has taught us anything, it's that a medium like this, a platform like this, can't exist forever. It will eventually die out. And all that these problems are doing is hastening that along, which means something is going to replace it. Now, perhaps it will replace itself. It does seem to reinvent itself every couple of years. Maybe it will just do that. But what with? And if that continues to be a problem, this is continuingly a bad trend. We need to know who did this to us so we don't let them make the next thing. We don't let them make the next World Wide Web. We don't let them steer where we go from here. So whose fault is this? Well, we have some options. It could be the people designing and developing the websites. That's a fair one. I mean, CNN.com is a mess. But that said, there are a lot of great websites out there and web developers that focus on really high quality pages and making their web pages as small and lightweight and fast as possible. And even those use up just a metric butt ton of RAM. So it's not completely web developers' fault, though a little bit. It could be the people developing the web browsers themselves. Well, that certainly is the case. I mean, website designers didn't force Firefox and Edge and Safari and Chrome to take up half a gigawatt of RAM every time they want to render a friggin' word on a web page. So, I mean, really, that's their fault. They did a crappy job of building the software. I mean, clearly, they didn't have to build it that way. Other web browsers, older web browsers, were capable of doing it just fine. I guarantee you, you could sit down right now and make an HTML renderer that looked as good as what Firefox has going on, at least with a base HTML spec, and it would not gobble up that much RAM. So they've got a problem there. But just the same, they're developing a web browser to meet the needs of the web pages that are out there. So maybe it's both of their faults. Maybe we should put this all at the feet of the W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium. They're the ones who created and or endorsed all these specs. These are standards that they endorsed. They're terrible. I mean, there's goodness in there. Don't get me wrong. I'm gonna hear all sorts of flames over this. I know there is good stuff in there, but there's also bad stuff. There's a lot of crud. It is the very definition of bloatware. The amount of stuff that just shouldn't be in a web page that can be in a web page now is insane. I mean, someone perhaps many someones, are right now going to point out that at least we don't have ActiveX controls and Java applets anymore. And you know what? They're right. Those sucked. But so do all these massive JavaScript bloat that we currently have. So it all sucks. Maybe it's the companies pushing those standards. The W3C probably wouldn't be pushing encrypted media DRM awfulness on us if the companies weren't pushing for it. After all, it was written by Microsoft, Google, and Netflix. They have a vested interest in this, and they've got a lot of money and lawyers and lobbyists. And maybe that's it. Maybe it's us. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's the surfers. Maybe it's the people going to the websites for putting up with this garbage nonsense in the first place. If we all take a stand against it, maybe the web designers will change their pages and the web browser developers will start creating more optimized, streamlined, svelte browsers that go fast and don't track us every time we take a fart. Maybe the W3C won't push DRM down our throats anymore. But you know what? It doesn't matter. I suppose it really doesn't matter. The only important thing is that we fix this. So in the interest of simply moving past this point and not laying blame at Mozilla for Firefox or Microsoft for IE and Edge or Google for Chrome and not the web developers who are just doing their jobs to make pretty little pages for CNN, let's move past all that. Let's lay the blame somewhere else. Let's just blame me. Put it all on me. If anything is wrong with the internet, it's my fault. I will gladly take the blame for all of it. DRM, I did it. Huge JavaScript bloat and 10 megabyte plus web pages loading libraries from 87 different servers around the globe, that was me. Ads that track your whereabouts and send your current location to dozens of companies, some of them not even in the country you live in, that was me. All my idea. I'm the one who did it. Now that we've blamed someone, all the hate, all the rage, pile it on me, yell at me, curse at me, swear me, go outside in the rain, shake your fist at the sky and curse my name. And then let's get back to making the web great. Make the web HTML again. I like this phrase. I just do. It rubs me in the right way because at its core, at its heart, the internet, the web, the World Wide Web, the WWW is a beautiful thing. It is open. It is information linked, organized, formatted, collated, and placed freely all over the world. Servers everywhere. I can modify it. You can modify it. We can do whatever we want with it. Let's take the best that we've got. Let's distill it down. Let's get rid of the crud. Let's get rid of the fluff. Let's get rid of the garbage that makes CNN.com take half a gigabyte of RAM. And let's get it down. Let's bring it on back down to like 10 megs. You know, it's totally doable. It's totally doable. Anyone who says it's not doable is a crappy software developer. Yeah, I said that. A lot of people are going to get pissed off at me for that. A couple of specific people I have in mind right up here are going to yell at me, and it's already amusing me greatly. But it's true. It's absolutely true. It is absolutely doable. There are entire operating systems that fit on a floppy that have networking stacks, old web browsers, text editors and office suites and multitask. It's amazing. There are games like Doom that do amazing things, that have networking multiplayer, that have 3D renderers and artificial intelligence that take up less total hard drive space and RAM than just the file size footprint for an average web page. If that's possible, then it's possible to make the web awesome. It's possible to make the web not suck so damned much. But in order to do that, we have to all commit to doing it together. I don't believe that most of the people who would be required to make that happen will do so. Because, I don't know. I don't know why not. but I don't think they will. Prove me wrong. Mozilla, Google, Microsoft, Apple, all of you web browser makers out there, get together. Make this happen. The W3C, reject encrypted media extensions outright. Issue a statement that not only are they not good for the web, but the very idea is bad for all of humanity. And then issue another proclamation that you're going to pull back on the overall standards that you accept for websites. And you're going to make it just simple. HTML, baby. Nice and simple. That's how you do it. Web developers, if you work on CNN.com, I issue you this challenge, specifically CNN.com. And if any other news website wants to beat CNN.com to it, please feel free to let me know and I will shame CNN.com. But CNN.com, get your website down to 1 meg. Think it's not doable? Maybe you're just not a good enough software developer. Maybe that's it. I think it's doable. I challenge you to do it. And if you do it, I will give you so many high fives, so many kudos. Work with the web developers the web browser developers to get the RAM usage down. Ask them, what's eating up all that RAM? Is there a specific HTML or JavaScript feature that's eating up the RAM? Find out. Kill it. Kill it with damned fire. That's how we do it. Now, we'll revisit this in a year. Will things have gotten any better? I doubt it. My guess is CNN will have wussed out and not taken me up on my challenge. My guess is the other news agencies, they won't have tried to beat CNN to the punch at all. My guess is overall RAM usage this time next year will be higher than it is this year. I don't know by how much. Probably a good percentage or so. My guess is that we'll also be about 500K larger on the average website web page size by this time next year. It just seems like we're trending that way. But if we create enough of a stink, if we shove things like this video and articles that people write about this and whatnot down web developers and companies' throats until they get the message, maybe we stand a chance at staving off the coming www apocalypse. Make the web HTML again.